Hey guys, Claire here, and in today's video, we're going to talk about all things Harry and Meghan. As the year comes to a close, Prince Harry's spirit continues to dominate bestsellers lists, most read lists, and most borrowed lists. Even fellow successful authors are commenting on the success of Spare. Variety released its year's 100 most watched telecasts of 2023, and Prince Harry's 60-minute interview with Anderson Cooper made it at number 40. Harry and Meghan were last seen with their kids vacationing in Costa Rica. Meanwhile, the UK tabloids are continuing to be their usual unhinged selves. You'd think that they'd focus on the royals in the UK, but of course they have to include Harry and Meghan into every headline. Jamaica continues to proceed forward in the process of removing King Charles as its head of state. Also, King Charles gave the annual Christmas speech, and I did not watch it. You guys let me know, did you? But from the articles and responses that I've seen on social media, I'm guessing that I didn't miss much. Also, the little sort of documentary that was done for Charles's coronation was released. And I saw a lot of conversation from people on social media about the monarchy in general. And, well, not all of it was positive. The UK tabloids continues to show us so many polls saying that the royal family is increasingly popular. But that's simply not true. And instead of focusing on truly connecting with the everyday man and giving back in a genuine and authentic way, I feel like the PR for the palace continues to use distraction tactics by continuing to vamp up this us versus them, the palace versus Harry and Meghan rhetoric. And I just don't know how successful that's going to be in the coming years.
Who's going to watch the King's speech on Christmas Day? I don't know about you, but I can't wait to stop what I'm doing on Christmas Day to watch a rich, unelected head of state tell us how the country's doing. I already know how the country's doing. I know that doctors and rail workers can't get a decent pay rise, whilst King Charles has had one of 45%. I know that there's 140,000 children that are homeless this Christmas, whilst he has several castles, palaces and estates worth billions. And I know that some people have 3 jobs just to keep their heads above water, whilst he barely does one. And perhaps most ridiculous is our so-called Green King, as in his eco-conscious, not that he's a pub chain, telling his millions of subjects to switch on their TVs, thus using a lot of electricity, which is very expensive and some struggle to pay for, so that he can tell us to think of others.
When is the royal family going to update their PR playbook? Because in the words of Dion Ferris in her 1994 smash single, I know what you're doing, and I don't think it's fair. So here's the deal. The royal family can't bear not to have the prince of alleged SAing walking with them on Christmas morning. Even though I, personally, if I was in that family, I would consider him to be a dangerous individual and I would not want anyone around him. But that's my opinion. And they know that having Andrew out there walking today is going to be a very quick tie-in to all the stuff that's being talked about right now about Epstein. Last year on the Christmas walk, they could kind of just bury Andrew because it was the first one for King Charles and Queen Consort Camilla, obviously with their new royal titles since the passing of Queen Elizabeth. People are going to write in and be like, that was not their first time at church service. Okay, you guys, you get what I'm talking about. So you know what they did? They called in Fergie. They actually did 2 things, I think. They called in Fergie and they were like, if you walk this morning with us for the first time since the 90s, everyone will be talking about it. And people will not forget, but the story that comes out will not be all about this guy. So hard not to swear sometimes. The story will be about how wonderful it is to see you. And you look very nice. That's a beautiful color on Sarah Ferguson. Like, they even let her have a good outfit, right? And then they did something else. Another distraction. They had Camilla give us a Meghan Markle 2018-esque look. Again, I think that like this hat was so specific when Meghan Markle wore it. And so they put Camilla in something that would be like, is, Camilla giving a nod to Meghan Markle with her hat? No, they just don't want you to talk about the fact that Prince Andrew's there. Oh, and the first person to write in and be like, this is a father enjoying Christmas services with his ex-wife and beloved children. Can't you be nice about that? No, I can't. Sorry. Happy holidays, Prince Andrew.
Oh, dear me, don't start me with this, carry on. I tell you what it is that make me physically sick, do you know that? You've got nurses on their backside, you've got everybody else on their backside with strikes and things like that. You've got these pouncing around in planes and things like that. It's time to get rid of them because they're outdated, mate. You know, the term, people criticise people on benefits and call them scoundrels. Mm-hmm. The royal family have never worked in their lives, and they're all sponges.
Well,
they're all sponges of the taxpayer, pet.
I know a lot of people hold that view. And I haven't watched the BBC documentary, just for clarity, but I think from reading the reviews, there was a lot of emphasis on how hard, in particular, I think the Princess Anne, is she the Princess Royal? I don't know. I don't know what all of their titles are, but how hard she works in terms of public appearances and, going out and being amongst the people.
That's not work, pet. Okay. That's not work, and bringing your fingers to the bones in factories, standing for 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, 16 hours a day to make ends meet, man. Mm. That's yourself on. They don't even have to wipe their own backsides.
The Daily Mail released figures for Kate's wardrobe costs, and the streets have been talking.
Let's take a look at this article that the Daily Mail just posted where they tallied up how much Kate Middleton spent in the year 2023 and compared to this one about Meghan Markle from a few months ago when she was at the Invictus Games in Germany. Before I get started, I want to shout out this Instagram page, Royal Style Watch, who inspired this video. If you don't follow them, you definitely should. And I want to say this headline is so misleading because when you get into the actual article and to the nitty gritty, you realize if they don't know the cost for something, they just won't include it, which isn't how it works. And because they can't identify it, they just don't include that cost in the final tally. They also do this for things that we know cost a lot of money. Kate Middleton's coronation dress, they just put as custom. They don't include the cost. So that wasn't included in the final tally. According to Royal Style Watch, this dress could easily cost between $40,000 to $75,000. That's not including the fact that there were sort of rumors going around that she had multiple coronation gowns. And if Kate had worn anything before, they would just not mark it towards the cost, which honestly is fair. However, do you think Meghan was awarded that same courtesy? Not only did they tally in known rewears, but they included gifts like Diana's Cartier watch that now belongs to Meghan. The worst, most egregious bit is when they tallied in her wedding band. And if Kate actually got treated fairly, we would see a lot more headlines like this. She showed up to the inaugural Shaping Us task force meeting in $12,000 worth of stuff. But this is how that Daily Mail article decided to cover that day. And listen, I truly don't care about how much money she spends on clothing. It's the hypocrisy that gets to me. Meghan Markle is not a working royal. She does not make her money off the taxpayers like Kate Middleton does. And she is still being unfairly treated in the media in a way Kate Middleton is not. We still treat Kate Middleton, a 42-year-old woman, with kid gloves. And Meghan Markle, who lives an ocean and continent away, still gets her life picked apart so people can continually hate her.
The UK media, they stay getting on my effing nerves. They love to play these games of verses while lying and leaving out important information just so they can give Kate the upper hand in certain situations. Another Dollar Tree puff piece for good old mediocre Kate. No surprise there. Now, in this article, they break down the amount of money she spent on wardrobe this year, and that price tag includes the £32,000 she spent on that headpiece for Charles's coronation. So, they do put a price tag on new items, but not on the things that she's already worn. And things that they can't identify, they don't put a price tag on it. And that is not fair, because I'm sure the media gets briefed about designers prior to any of her royal engagements. And side note, what the hell is going on with Kate's ankle? It is not lined up with her foot. I am concerned for her. Anywho, here is where they add the 32,000-pound chunk of her wardrobe that she supposedly spent for the year. Girl, you spent 32,000 pounds of the taxpayers' money on that? Oh, wow. Girl, I wouldn't have told nobody that. That would have been a secret I would have took to my damn grave. Shameful. Now, a few months back, the Daily Fail wrote this article on the cost of all of Meghan's Invictus looks. And they tallied her shit up to $300,000. Jesus, activate pearls clutched. Now riddle me this. Can somebody please explain to me how these pound puppies can add a price tag to damn near everything that Meghan wore when they don't even know if she owned any of those pieces prior to the Invictus Games? They don't have access to Meghan anymore. They don't know a damn thing about her personal business. These two women, they are not the same. One of them is a welfare recipient. You cannot clock somebody's coins when you're not footing the bill. Meghan is a boss. She can pay for her own clothes, even as a working royal.
Every time I see press like this, I think something is going to happen. The ball is going to drop. Some sort of scandal is about to be exposed. Because why is the press talking about Kate Middleton so much in the last 2 days? This headline says that Kate Middleton is prepared to fight for what she thinks is right. Okay. Right before I saw that headline, I saw this one that said Kate Middleton is closer to King Charles than Prince William. Okay. Then boom. And 90% of these are coming from People magazine for some reason. Don't know why. It says Kate Middleton has moved on from drama with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, says a friend. Why are we talking about Kate so much? Why are we talking about how close to the king she is and how it's so much closer than his own son? I am like a hound when it comes to gossip, and I'm sniffing something out here, okay? I don't know what's going on, but this press that she's been getting for the last 2 days is unusual. What are they preparing us for? Tell us what they're preparing us for.
Now, speaking of Kate, both Kate and William were slammed as being lazy. Now, I'm not surprised because if we've looked at the figures for the engagements over the years, they're consistently very low. And from the statements that they've made, they have no intentions of working harder when William becomes king. But I am surprised that there are people within the UK tabloids who are comfortable with calling a spade publicly. They did that before Meghan came on the scene, but then, the invisible contract kicked in. And we've seen nothing but glowing reviews and articles for William and Kate. So this one is surprising.
I want to respond to this question that was left on the video that I made about the influx of PR articles about Kate Middleton in American media. It says, do you think the royal family wants positive popularity in the United States to try to diminish and suppress support for Harry and Meghan, especially financial support for Harry and Meghan's charities? The short answer is yes. I do think that the royal family wants to diminish and suppress support for Harry and Meghan, but there are a couple of reasons. One reason, and this is probably the lesser of the two, is the ongoing one-sided competition. Harry touched on this in Spare with numerous examples. Essentially, anytime Harry had something that William didn't, William either wanted it for himself or he wanted it taken away. We see this in the story of William saying that Africa was his thing, William's insistence that Harry shave his beard because William had to shave his. When Harry created Invictus, William's initial response was anger because it may take money away from something he wanted to do, and even Harry finding love. William repeatedly told Harry, it may never happen, you just have to accept that. You can even go back and watch videos from when they were younger and see that the competition, or maybe jealousy, was always there.
What would you want to do?
I think I don't know, it's a really tricky question, it goes through my head lots. I'd like to fly helicopters, definitely.
How about you, Harry?
He'd probably sit and play computer games and drink beer. Thanks a lot. No, I honestly, I don't know how well this would get out, but I'd probably live in Africa. I'd like to spend all my time out there.
In a humanitarian
both. It would be a humanitarian aspect and as well as a sort of safari aspect. As a job, they'd probably be a safari guide, and then it'd be really good for me because he wouldn't be around, you see, so I get the highest. At the same time, splitting my time between a charity, in the suit, probably the suit as well. If I became normal tomorrow.
But I think that the larger and more significant reason It's that Harry and Meghan's success away from the royal family without taxpayer funding threatens to topple the very premise on which the monarchy sits.
The issue is when someone who's marrying in, it should be a supporting act, is then stealing the limelight or is doing the job better than the person who was born to do this. That upsets people. It shifts the balance. Because you've been led to believe that the only way that your charities can succeed and the only way that your reputation can be grown or improved is if you're on the front pages of those newspapers.
As Harry says, a large argument for the monarchy is that the members of the royal family visiting or supporting charities makes those charities successful. That these half-hour or hour visits once a year or less could make or break the success of the thousands of organizations of which they are patrons. However, a 2020 study by the organization Giving Evidence found that the opposite is true. In the year prior to the study being conducted, 74% of the royal family's patronages did not receive any public engagements with their patron, and only 1% of the charities had more than one public engagement with their patron. The study also points out specifically that Kate has a patronage that at the time of the study, she had not visited in 8 years. They also found that the charities that had the most engagements with the royals were often the ones that the royals had set up themselves. Their study found no evidence that a charity having a royal patron increased the charity's revenue in comparison to a charity without a royal patron. And additionally, most of the patronage are in non-controversial topics like the environment, animals, culture, and sport, while areas like housing, employment, social services, and religion are underrepresented. But regardless of the data, many royalists believe what they are told, and that is that these organizations can only remain successful if a member of the royal family is attached to them. It has been sold to the public that the royals are able to live a life of service because they are taxpayer funded, so they're worth the cost. However, in 2021, when Harry and Meghan's patronages were taken from them, their statement in response had a very significant line that they have continued to prove. Service is universal. They know, as do most other people, that you can live a life of service and support charities and organizations without taxpayer funding and without being a working royal. And not only do Harry and Meghan know that, but they are doing it, and doing it well. In 2021 and 2022 alone, the Archewell Foundation donated $4.3 million to charities, in comparison to the Royal Foundation's £4.8 million donated to charity. Those are fairly similar numbers. But the royal family and the UK media don't want the general public to know that. The public cannot know that Harry and Meghan are doing exactly what the other members of the royal family are doing, but they're doing it with their own funding, because then people might start to question the point of the monarchy. This is also why, after Archewell's financial report came out, all of the headlines in the UK tabloids were skewed to say that the organization had lost money, instead of saying that Archewell was supporting charities and organizations in 5 continents and had over $8 million in assets. The message has to be, and has been since Harry and Meghan stepped back, that they are failing without the support of the royal family. Almost 4 years later, Byline Times also touched on this in their articles on the cash for leaks scandal between William's secretary and Dan Wootton. They said the greater truth is that Harry and Meghan make better headlines than the King and Camilla or William and Kate, and the idea of them being in public service but abroad and out of control of the institution and dominating the media narrative just couldn't happen. So as we know, to try to get them back, Charles took their security, took their funding, and signed off on a 12-month assault on them by the UK press. However, they still lived a life of public service, were out of the control of the institution, and dominate the media narrative. The royal family and the UK media both know that Harry and Meghan being successful, financially independent, and still living a life of service pulls back the curtain for so many people and has them asking, why is a monarchy needed at all? If Harry and Meghan can do what the royals are doing, and in some cases, like Invictus, do it better, then why can't the rest of the royals do this on their own too? Why do they need billions in wealth? So again, to answer the original question, yes, it is absolutely important for the royal family to diminish and suppress support for Harry and Meghan in the US, because growing support for Harry and Meghan means more scrutiny for the rest of them.
I want to talk about this comment, and not this commentator, because I get a version of this comment a lot. Here's the thing. There is acknowledgement that one does not know Meghan Markle personally, but then they do not like her behavior. But it's not because of the media. But if you don't know her, how else would you know her behavior? Let's look at some data points to support this idea that the media does in fact influence your feelings on people that you do not know. From The Guardian from 3 years ago, it studied headlines of Meghan Markle and Kate Middleton, then Duchess of Cambridge, over the time span of May 2018, right after Harry and Meghan got married, up through mid-January 2020, when they announced they would be departing working royal life. This is from 14 print newspapers, so this is not digital. This is not TV commentary. This is just printed articles. During that 2.5-year time frame, Meghan had 843 articles written about her. 43% were negative, 36 were neutral, and 20% were positive. Almost 80% of her coverage was negative or neutral. Kate received about an eighth of the coverage. 144 articles to 843 articles. 45% of the articles about Kate were in a positive tone, 47 neutral, and just 8% negative. Over 90% of what was reported about Kate Middleton in the same time period was positive or neutral. And this isn't because of the plethora of good journalism around Meghan Markle. This is because of what makes money.
When I did write positively about Meghan, which I did, got no reaction.
In my year plus of looking into the relationship between the British media and the British royal family, I have yet to be given a good reason why Meghan Markle deserved this kind of coverage. And it's wild that literally just talking about the data points around this coverage and obvious statements of the fact that misogynoir undergirds a lot of this coverage is enough to get you labeled a stan or on Meghan's payroll. As we know, Meghan Markle is a billion-dollar industry. It's not just the media coverage. It is the coordinated social media campaigns as revealed in the Bot Sentinel report. And then royal commentators such as Angela Levin taking this information and spewing it on TV for even more people to see. This isn't about journalism. This is about the bottom line. And the bottom line is keeping the shareholders happy and the advertisers happy. And hopefully the public will like this, which obviously they do because we have adjusted our diets to only consuming infotainment and journalism and not actual journalism. That is one of the reasons I am so passionate about media literacy, because it's not going to necessarily change all the problems we have in our media environment right now, but it would certainly help. It's very telling that the people that don't care about Meghan Markle spend so much time on people's videos commenting negatively about her. Or even worse, make an income off of the vitriol. That's not healthy. I really recommend yoga. That is a very unhealthy parasocial relationship. Saying the media and social media coverage has no bearing on your opinion of this individual is just not true.
The point of no return for Harry and Meghan as it pertains to Harry's family?
Yeah, I think that point of no return was quite early on, actually. And I talk about this in the book, where when Harry realizes that the calls are coming from inside the house, you know, when he realizes that it's the people on his brother's team who are responsible for some of the most negative and damaging stories about them entering the public domain. And so then you realize, well, no one has my back in this situation. It's almost like the only result of staying within that is to completely fall, to come out of it so bruised and battered that there's nothing left for you. And I think that was when they started to explore the possibilities of, like, do they move to Southern Africa and are they based out there for a while? Or do they start a life in Canada and do this half in, half out scenario that they wanted to, you know, that they ran by the Queen at one point? And ultimately this was because they didn't want to disrespect the Queen. So it was only when the institution said to them, like, you know what, like, it's either here or the highway, they took the highway. And unfortunately since then there has been no real, like, repair or movement in the right direction.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just had a very interesting conversation with someone about the art of minding your business and the art of staying in your lane, because it pays to mind your business. And it reminded me of these two, right? A lot of the things that has transpired in these last few years, it's because they didn't mind their business, right? Because from the moment that Harry and Meghan's relationship was outed, of course, there were things going on in the press that were unacceptable. But I am sure those two not minding their business just pretty much hastened things along. It all could have been so simple. It all could have been so easy. And here's the thing, they didn't have to like Meghan, right? They could just have simply left her alone. It was really that simple. They could have just left her alone, not have tried to make her life a living hell. It could have all just been so easy. But this is why it pays to mind your business. But hey, that's why they say be careful what you wish for. They wanted the limelight, and now they have it. And they're still boring. They're still lacking. They still don't have the range, right? They are still not that girl. They'll still never be that girl, right? And so, something random, I just wanted to let you guys know. They keep writing all these articles about how Will and Kate are moving on from the Harry and Meghan drama, the drama that they started. However, how are you going to be moving on from the drama when you're still talking about them, you're still dressing like them, you're still using their, I guess, the templates that they've used for their own initiatives, for your own initiatives. You still have Pinterest boards of them. You're still copying their mannerisms. So you can't really be that over them, Weird stuff.
You're exactly right. That is exactly what they wanted him to do. They wanted him to follow in the footsteps of his great-grandfather, his great-aunt, and his aunts and uncles, and choose subservience to the heir over his own happiness and his own life. They fully expected him to divorce Meghan and abandon his son, at the time his son, and come back and be of service to William. The fact that he didn't is the reason that he is in all of this despair at this point. But yeah, that was exactly the reason that they're upset, because William no longer has a lackey the way that Charles and Elizabeth and King Edward did.
Is there a good reason why the Queen actually got an exemption to be able to discriminate against people in her household? This is a question I got a lot like this when I posted about how the Queen, and now the King, has special exemptions from certain types of discrimination law in the UK. Specifically, they can discriminate against people on the basis of race and sex. A lot of people who didn't know about this then said, well, did they have a reason for this? What was the reason that they wanted to do this discrimination? A lot of people wondered if this was about the Queen's ladies-in-waiting. Did she need an exemption from sex discrimination, for example, so that she could have ladies-in-waiting or some kind of equivalent for Prince Philip, the King, etc.? But that's not what the palace talks about when it goes back and forth with the government about the Sex Discrimination Act in the 70s. Instead, they say, you shouldn't be allowed to do this. It is inappropriate and derogatory for Her Majesty's policies to make it possible for proceedings to be brought against her in her own courts. So you might be thinking, oh, this doesn't have anything to do with discrimination at all. This is just about the Queen thinking that she is above the law and shouldn't be held to any laws whatsoever. It does sound like that is a thing. However, note this next section about the Race Relations Bill and the important precedent that it set for exemptions for Her Majesty. What they're talking about there is a previous act that happened in 1968 that was trying to apply workplace discrimination law according to race. And the Crown successfully lobbied to have the Queen exempted from this, not because she was above the law, but bear with me for a second. They wanted that exemption from the law because they did not appoint coloured immigrants or foreigners to clerical positions. They did, however, say that they would be open to applications for other, more domestic positions. Recap so far, in 1968, the Crown said to the government, we don't want the Race Relations Act to apply to us because we do not appoint coloured people or immigrants to certain positions, and we don't want to take any criticism for that. And then in the 70s, when the Equal Pay and Sex Discrimination Acts were being created, the palace said, hold on there, we want the same exception that we got in the Race Relations Bill back in 68. You can see that in section B here, where they're saying, basically, can the same thing that we did for the Race Relations Bill, can we just do that for this one too, please? The same exceptions. There was one more thing the palace wanted. Not only did they want to be able to discriminate on the basis of race, which they successfully lobbied for in 1968, but then they also wanted to be exempted from the Equal Pay Act and the Sex Discrimination Act, but they also didn't want anyone to know that they were exempt. When they were talking about the sex discrimination bill, they said that the original wording of the exemption just for them was unacceptable because it was explicit. But the new wording that only implied that the Crown had an exemption was acceptable to them because it did not explicitly call out that they had this special exemption. So you might be thinking, okay, that was 1968, that was 1970, all of this has moved on, the palace has moved on, this is old news, and I'm sure they're doing things differently now. However, the decades moved on, but the palace didn't seem to change anything. It was noted in 1990 that there were no black faces in royal service. In 1997, the palace said that they weren't actually monitoring any kind of affirmative action or equality statistics. And the Equality Act was passed in 2010, which consolidated all of these other discrimination acts like the Race Relations Bill, the Sex Discrimination Act. The exemptions were kept on. You can see in this side note, an explanatory note in the Equality Act, that it says the Act replicates the arrangements for discrimination legislation for taking proceedings against the Crown. Very vague language, but very clearly allowing the Crown to maintain their exception for discriminating against people on the basis of both race and sex. This is absolutely not something that would have just gotten thrown in without the palace being asked about it, or indeed without them actively lobbying to maintain their exceptions. I wish this was as simple as a queen asking for an exception so that she can have ladies in waiting or, you know, something cute like that. But the reality is much more disturbing. The reality is that a crown lobbied the government successfully asking for an exemption from discrimination law, some of the first in the UK, so that they can continue to exclude people on the basis of their skin colour and their foreignness. And then they used that successful exemption that they got in one way to then apply to other types of discrimination that they wanted to be able to do. They didn't want any of these bills to apply to them. They wanted to be able to keep on discriminating without any kind of accountability, and they also didn't want anyone to know about it. And most concerningly for me, when they had the opportunity to just let all of this fall by the wayside, all of it to disappear as the new act came together in 2010 and go forward into a new modern monarchy or something like that, they did not take that opportunity. They almost certainly successfully lobbied to keep those exemptions for themselves so that they could maintain the legal right to discriminate against people on the basis of their nationality, their skin color, and their sex. Now you might say, Danae, this is just an old-fashioned institution who are being old-fashioned. Why are you so upset about it? I'm talking about it because this is a headline from literally a month ago that the royal family wanted us all to see. Princess Kate and Prince William doing a photo op about the Windrush generation, celebrating the Windrush generation, trying to portray this monarchy as somebody who cares about race relations and wants to be seen as a race-positive, forward-thinking kind of monarchy. Which monarchy does the UK have? Is it the one posing for the photo ops with the Windrush generation, hugging children and smiling as a modern ethical monarchy? Or is it the monarchy that has a secret special exemption that allows them to discriminate, and one that they do not want to get rid of and renewed as recently as 2010?
First of all, I still think spaniel when I see the Turtle King child, and so it shall be. Secondly, this man is encouraging service. This man that lives off blood money, a man that is a literal symbol for supremacy, and whose most relatable moment was making statements about his sausage fingers. Whose man's is this? Whose man's is this? This man had Diana, and that makes me mad. Posthumously for her. And who is the best British inbreeding has to offer. This visage is supposed to bring comfort to a country? This is bone-chilling. Oh, Lord.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, hit that notification bell.